Hello again. My name is Dr. Bill Johnson. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Exploring Our Schools. To tell you the truth, today we're going to talk about a subject which is really foreign to me and something I'm just beginning to learn about. It really grew because of students who said they really wanted to learn more about coding. So here we are today talking about a new offering at Southside High School on coding, and I have Keith Gamache, who is one of the teachers who is part of that new project. Actually, Keith is an art teacher, interestingly enough, and I'm not sure how you figured out how to get yourself involved in this, but you did.
Right.
And we have two students, a junior
Hello.
and a senior. So they'll have an opportunity in just a minute to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves. But if you could just talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about how you got involved in this.
Sure. Well, it's,
And what is it, by the way?
Okay. It's a semester course. It's called Intro to App Development with Swift, which is part of Apple's Everyone Can Code curriculum and initiative that really runs from kindergarten through community college or freshman year of college course offerings. So when Mr. Murphy had presented this new opportunity for us at the high school, I said, if you would like for me to be one of the teachers, I have an interest in doing that. Part of that also has to do with the fact that I have two sons myself, an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they gravitate towards science and technology as well. So I just viewed it as an opportunity for me to learn a new skill, to share this with the students here and provide more opportunities for the kids at Southside.
So why don't we start by Stephanie Mazzotti, all right, and Samantha Sheffield. Thank you both very much. Part of the reason for saying that you were both a junior and a senior is that this is neither it crosses all the grades.
Yes.
So it's really on the basis of interest, not just exclusively on the basis of what grade you're in.
Exactly.
So why don't we start with a senior? Tell me a little bit, why you, why now?
Well, I have a high interest in math and art, and I didn't know much about computer science.
Math and art?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's my main interest, the combination of the two.
is that very usual?
Well, actually, both of the students here today have art backgrounds and interest in art, and I think that the idea of creativity and coding, I think, go hand in hand. But as you mentioned, the students in the class really do run a diverse sample. It's freshmen through seniors. Currently, there are 2 sections, and it's full. There are 40 total students in the class. But the 2 students here today have an interest in art as well as coding.
So I interrupted you, I'm sorry, but now it's your turn. Go ahead.
I also have an interest in technology, and that's a lot about coding. And even though I've been in this course now, it's still really hard to define exactly what coding is. But it's pretty much a set of directions, and you can figure out how to create something. And I guess that's similar to my interest in art, is that I like creating things, and that's similar to coding.
How about you, Samantha? You feel the same way?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. But I like also creating things, and I had a really strong connection with the online world and stuff, and I saw a lot of different creators and such online, creating their own things and games and such, and I had a really strong interest and wanted to do something similar to that.
So have you had a chance to get anything created yet?
Yeah, we created an app. It was simple, but it's understandable because we didn't have, at least I don't have a lot of experience with coding. And it was a single photo displayer app. So you just opened it up and it showed you one picture. But it was still pretty cool to learn how to create something that, you could download and it would be on your iPad.
All right. How about you?
Hmm. Well, we created the same app, but
Oh, you all did
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
the
It
whole
was a
class
project.
made what's called a single view or single picture app.
Okay.
But it was still cool learning how to put messages on it and be able to have an input where we explored the program we used to actually create the app and such, and I explored and I found a way to have a keyboard and you could type into it and stuff like that.
Right.
Just fun to explore and see what you could do.
A lot of work at home?
No, not really. I mean, from time to time we have reading checks just to make sure that we're understanding everything and nobody falls behind in coding, because it can be a little difficult to remain like keeping everything in your head. But I wouldn't say that we have a big workload. It's more of a class. It's fun for me, and it's something I'm interested in.
So what do you have to keep in your head?
There are a lot of terms in coding that it's not just English. It's like its own language. So you have to remember what each word means, when to use each one. It's pretty much like learning a new language. It can be complicated.
And there are funny things too where capitalization becomes important. So we've been working with strings recently, and you have to have
Well,
the
we all know
first letter
about
of the
capitalization
word
meaning
string.
something when you try to get your password and you forget your password.
Sure.
Right.
And then with code, all of a sudden you'll get an error message. And sometimes we're staring at it because we're just thinking about the word content and what it means. And then all of a sudden, whether it dawns on me or it dawns on the student, oh, I need to capitalize that letter. And then you go ahead, you delete it, replace it with a capital, your little error message goes away, and then you move on. So it really does encourage a lot of problem-solving skills with the students, and close and careful reading is important as well.
So what's the role of Apple in all of this?
In what sense?
Well,
For-
you said this had its origins with, and the training was
Yes.
essentially,
Okay, so this summer, to help me get trained, and one thing I shared with all the students and the parents at Back to School Night, my prior coding experience was when I was in high school, and I showed the students pictures of an Apple IIe computer, and it was learning the language BASIC. So I do have a very basic fundamental knowledge and background experience. But this summer, I had some training in the city, and I recently went to another training too at Apple's education headquarters in New York, where I learned more specifically about the Swift language. So Apple does have this commitment to making coding accessible to children as young as kindergarten. And they've developed a curriculum, like I said, from kindergarten through community colleges. And one of the goals, too, of community colleges is doing a lot of job retraining, realizing that people need to understand this sometimes to switch careers as other industries maybe no longer exist, and it's done to help them out.
so is this a career opportunity, or is it really the apps that are the more important aspect of it?
It definitely presents potential for growth. Xcode, which is the compiler that where you type in the language, the Swift language, is a real world place where people code. And the Swift language is a language that Apple created based on Objective-C, which had existed for years, to write their iOS apps. So it's definitely something that the students here are learning that they can continue to work with.
How closely wedded are we then to Apple products as a result of this?
I mean, that's one of the things, we all have the iPads, and we use this other program or an app called Swift Playgrounds, which is a game-based app, and it exists somewhere between the block coding that the students are learning in elementary and middle school and actually typing and entering their own coding. So that makes it a little bit more of a fun way, too, to learn, as Stephanie mentioned, this new language. It's new syntax, new vocabulary. So that's how Apple is integrated within it there. Some of the students, if they have a bias towards like PCs and in other languages, were a little nervous coming in at first, perhaps even apprehensive. But I think they're seeing the value in learning an additional language.
So do you do the, well, yeah, it's funny, when you learn BASIC, we used to talk about it as programming.
Mhm.
Now it's all coding. So even the very basic descriptors are changing. So tell me, just out of curiosity, what do you use? Do you use the iPad?
Well, to code and to learn using the curriculum from Swift, we use the Mac computers, and it's nice because they're a really big screen, so you can keep track of all your work, and I like it better that way. But sometimes if we need to just practice on the iPad using Swift Playgrounds, we can do that too.
Oh, you can?
Yeah. So, and even if you want to create an app using the Swift curriculum on the Mac computer, you can download it to your iPad so you can see it.
So how about you? I mean, look, I think one of the things we need to understand, we actually put together a lab for this purpose.
Right.
So the computers that we purchased were the iMacs.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're pretty good, pretty sophisticated.
They're very good, and as Stephanie indicated, we have nice large monitors, so it makes it
Yeah,
a
we
lot
got the 27-inch
easier.
monitor. So,
Right.
Right.
So rather than the students having to scroll up and down a lot, or left to right, or minimize windows and be opening and closing things, they have a nice workspace where they can see all of their code in most cases on the screen.
Are you comfortable with it?
Yeah, I really like how the setup is. Like, maybe the room's a little squishy because there's a lot of people in there, because a lot of people have a lot of the same interests in the class. But it's nice how we have our own little area, our own little desk, and we could program. We have a nice display. We have people around us, like, to help us out. We could just turn to our friend over and be like, hey, how did you do this? And maybe get a couple ideas. But it's also nice that we have the iPad for, like, we usually use the app where it was more focused towards elementary school, middle school, but we could also use it. I feel like it's good to introduce, like, different concepts that before we actually do it on the computer and learn to actually type and code it.
Right. So just out of curiosity, and by the way, I think we should understand that Samantha's a junior.
Yes.
She can take this course again next year.
Sure, yeah.
Right. So it's built so that you can have beginners, people who understand it fairly well, and then you can have advanced students at the same time.
Yes, and what we're trying to do too within the classroom itself, because students move at different paces. There's a lot of reading, but it's all hands-on learning, really. They're not sitting there for a lecture. It's really called playgrounds, where they get to experiment with the code, and then there's a feature on the right side of the screen that's called the results sidebar. So the students get instantaneous feedback on whether or not their code is actually working. And as Sam had mentioned, they can turn to the person next to them. So we also really try to encourage a collaborative spirit to problem solving. It's not about who got it right, who got it wrong, but how can we learn together? And then students who might repeat, there are always ways that they could increase the complexity of their code within, say, the same framework that's set up. So it does provide for a lot of those opportunities.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, and you'll take it for the year, what were your expectations when you went into it?
I had no experience before this class with coding, but it was something that interested me and I wanted to learn more about. And when I learned that Southside was offering the course, I immediately wanted to take it rather than have an off period. I figured, why not learn a new skill that seems pretty interesting? So I figured that it would be slow because it's an introductory class, but I figured it would also be pretty cool, and it's been meeting my expectations so far.
How about you?
I wasn't sure exactly where the course would bring us because it was the first class and it was brand new. So I wasn't sure at like what point it would, like how far it would lead me into it. But I knew that it would be more than what I already knew, and I was hoping maybe one day like it could lead me into more into it.
You know, it's so interesting. Years ago, I mean, we've to some extent come full circle. You wouldn't know this, but we had programming in the school district a long time ago, and then we had to abandon it because students lost interest and there was no market for it anymore. Now here we come back again with all the sophisticated equipment that we have, and we're back to coding. So I find it fascinating. Where do you think this is going to end up? I mean, look, you're a young person. You grew up with technology in ways in which he and I never did. You're really comfortable with the environment, I'm assuming, right? What do you think you're going to do with it eventually?
I was hoping maybe one day I could get into like computer science or something. Maybe I could program or create my own things or different types of apps and such. Hopefully change how like
How
a
about
lot.
the world of art? I mean, it's really changing. There's so much interactive artwork right now. So I don't know if that's where either of your heads were at, but
That actually relates to virtual reality, which is, I guess, a combination of computer science and art, where it's all visual based, but you're still coding and creating using technology. And that's something that interests me a lot, and I think it's growing a lot right now.
you know, sometimes we dream about the future. We wonder where this is going to take us. I'd love to hear from either of you about where do you think technology, I mean, you know, we talk about driverless cars, buses that are going to take you to school without a driver, trucks that are going to go across the country without drivers. We have vacuums that clean your house right now, and we just plug them in, turn them on, and all of which started with somebody deciding to program something, to do something to help us. What's your gut? What do you think? Not that you give a lot of thought to this, but
I mean, I seen a couple concepts online of like people making different like ideas. Like I seen somewhere it was like refrigerators, they were digital, and like you could put digital notes, like countertops where you could like look stuff up and have like cooking recipes and stuff. Like I seen cool concepts like that. Like so then like even like your life at home, it would be really, advanced.
see, the next best idea may be yours. How would you modify that? You're smiling, but I mean, have you got an idea that you'd like to pursue?
Yeah, I come up actually a lot with coding. I've come up with app ideas that I don't know how to create right now, but I'm hoping that with this course I will learn more. And then when I'm done with it, I can code on my own and maybe get to those apps.
Would you like to share one of those ideas with us, or is that proprietary? Right.
I think one of them was an app to help public transit. Just because I feel like there can be a lot of problems with that, and I think that public transit has great potential and we should use it, but there are a lot of problems. But it was just an app that would have an alarm when you want to get to your start. It's just a basis of an idea, but I still want to create something that can help a lot of people.
Isn't that interesting? How about you?
Well, I didn't really put that much thought in like how it could help everyone, like everyday society, but I was thinking like maybe like because I've been like on the online world, I'm very interested like in games and such, so maybe like taking some concept of games on the computer and putting it onto like different tablets and such.
Yeah.
Maybe like transferring it.
It's funny, I'm involved every year in discussions and trying to figure out what the next wave is that we're going to have to deal with and try to introduce it into our schools so that it makes sense for both our students and for us instructionally. So, any ideas about where this is going to take us? I mean, this is brand new for us, and I was not joking before when I said I literally know nothing about it. And yet at the same time I recognized, and so did we in the school district, others, how important this was.
Well, for me as a teacher in the room, one thing that I realized right away is I have some students in the class who have zero prior knowledge or experience,
Right.
and others who, if Southside offered intermediate or advanced coding, they would want to sign up for that class. So how do we, in our first course offering, make something that can appeal to all of those students? And that's really the environment we're trying to create. And I think we will continue to get better at it, and also to realize that the teachers here have some knowledge and experience, but some of our students have been doing independent reading and coding on their own for years. So giving them an avenue to share with us too, to help our program grow and really meet the needs of their future.
So you as facilitator in the class actually can utilize the skills of others, of the kids in the school.
Yeah, that's what we're really trying to do with it. And the students too have been good about recognizing this is a new language. They have new things to learn, and I want them to follow through on that. But if they finish up early, they can use that time to explore their interests or go into the program a little bit more in depth or independently.
Any last words about possibly recommending it to some of your classmates or younger people coming through the system? Would you recommend it?
Of course, yeah. Even if you don't really know what it is, because it's hard to define, I take it and it's still pretty hard for me to tell someone what coding is. I think that you should take the class because you're going to learn a new skill and you never know, you could love it. And I think computer science is so integrated in many other things that we don't even realize, and you can apply it to other areas.
Wow. How about you, Samantha?
Well, it's a very sorry, I blanked out.
Do you think other people might want to take the course?
Yeah, I think it's a very different class from other classes, and it's a very cool experience to like be able to like walk into a class and actually use the computers, which we don't really do as much in other classes, and learn how to like come and to develop things. It's kind of like a mixture of like maybe like when I was taking photography, how we would like learn how to use Photoshop and such, but it's also not like it's like a mix also of an art class and like the way of like where you could create and such, yeah.
It's really designed to open doors, and we're very open on our end to learning more about it and find out whether or not there may be additional offerings that we want to provide to kids down the road. So, anyway, it's a start, and I thank you both for sharing with us your experience this year. Keith, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's clear that you were a great choice for this.
Thank you.
Well, you actually jumped in with both feet. I mean,
It's been a wonderful experience, and I mean, for all the students, and I think it just demystifies coding as well, because you hear the word sometimes and you can get
right, and run for
really
the hills.
frightened. But
Right.
here, at least, you might leave the class and go, well, it's not for me, but at some point in the future, you can engage in dialogue, and at least you understand it a little bit more, and that's one of the best aspects too, in my opinion.
Great way to end. So thank you, all of you, for joining me today, and thank you for joining us. I hope this has somewhat demystified the whole concept of coding and recognize how valuable it is for we here at Southside and in our school district. So thanks again for joining us. We hope to see you next time. Bye now.